Okay, guys, welcome to my day one wrap up of Toronto Audio Fest. And I got to tell you, I'm so glad I came for a variety of reasons. It's been a blast the last 2 days. Make sure you watch what I did yesterday that didn't even have anything to do with the Toronto Audio Fest, though. It's been a blast being up here and working and meeting Angela Gilbert Young, who's doing my subwoofer amp. I disclosed that yesterday. That's going to be a phenomenal video. I'm going to release that next week, though. But getting to the show today, I made some notes because sometimes when I do this off the cuff, well, my notes are off the cuff, so I'm still probably leaving some stuff out, but I want to get to a few things for sure. And first thing I want to get to is this show is extremely well run. I didn't know anything about the group that organizes this. It's my first time coming to these shows. I think they do one in Montreal and then this one in Toronto. Extremely well run. Now, there have been some problems with the hotel not having internet and whatnot, and the rooms maybe not being as conducive to sound quality. But in terms of a well-run show, super well attended on the first day, I was impressed. And elevators work good. Overall, other than the internet causing a problem and some room issues, which I'll talk about later, very impressed for day one and my first time at this show. It's not a huge show, but as you're going to hear, I think the macro takeaway for me, not so much sound quality. In fact, some of those floors in these rooms do not sound that great. In fact, it reminded me of Munich, where every room, unless they created a room within a room, didn't sound good. I know I wasn't hearing the potential of the gear. But what was cool about this show is I'm seeing a lot of brands I never see at the shows in the US. A lot of French brands, Canadian brands, and just brands that have decided, even Australia. The first one I'm going to talk about was the first room I went in today was Perot. And I hadn't seen them in ages at a show. And it was good to see the internals, if you watch that video, the internals of under the hood, and then externally, they allow you mixing and matching of colors, black and white. Looks a lot like my amps. And so good to see them back at a show. I thought they weren't even around anymore. So that was one I wanted to talk about. And like I said, though, sound quality in my videos, I don't know how much comes out through the cell phone. I upload these as soon as I come out. I don't even listen to them. So you're going to have to tell me what you're hearing. But for me, the sound quality on that entire floor, that's why I knew it didn't have to do with the gear. Every single room I went into was far below what I was expecting. And I was even blowing I thought from the air flight last night that maybe, or actually yesterday, that I thought I had cleared my ears, but that's the kind of sound I was getting. Some rolled off and reverb. I think it's the laminate floors. They have laminate floors here, not carpet. And whatever it is, the dimensions or whatever's going on in some of these rooms is giving a honky kind of opaque sound. Vocal sound way off to me. Bass is okay. It's not so much room modes. I think it's just something is weird. Maybe my voice, you can tell me if my voice sounds the same in this room on this video. I'm still puzzled. What I think, and I'm gonna get to some rooms down in my list that are line sources that don't as much dispersion. They don't disperse as much sound to the floor and ceilings. Those sounded to me when I got to those rooms later in the day, sounded a little better. And maybe that's the case, is the ceiling and floor reflections and the dimensions are causing that issue. But just wanted to throw that out there. I would not blame the gear if that's what you're hearing as well when you come to this show or hear it on my recordings. It is something different with the room. Trust me on that. One room, though, on that fourth floor really blew me away was I saw the Miyajima Labs, I saw Western Electric, but I saw the Bird of Prey tone arm. And so as I go to these shows, sometimes you've seen, I get the itch to get back into vinyl. Well, today was probably the biggest itch that I got because number one, I love that Bird of Prey tone arm. It's just badass looking, badass title. I gotta have it. If I'm doing a turntable, I'm having the Bird of Prey tone arm. But on top of just that, from sound quality metrics, I've heard that before, really good. But we did a little demo later in the day in the Acora room where he was playing St. James Infirmary. And if you watch that video, when I sat down, I immediately asked him, because I could kind of tell it was the digital streaming version, which isn't nearly as good. And like I say, I'm a digital guy, Mr. DSP, but I will admit there are certain recordings, no question, much better on vinyl. And St. James Infirmary is definitely one of them. And plus, on top of that, he had the 45 version of that Satchmo Plays King Oliver, and he had a SAT turntable, the Lyra cartridge, phenomenal setup. Now it cost more than a Ferrari, probably more than 2 Ferraris, but it's a tremendous advantage in that room. So if you go into the Cora room, make sure you ask him to play that SAT turntable and pick a great album. Really sounded great. And I have some late night stuff from that room as well. But again, also on that 4th floor, another cool thing that happened was they played Ghost of Johnny Cash in the Borison room. And this is another, the Borison room played 2 songs that I knew really well. Acoustic by Billy Rafool and Ghost of Johnny Cash. Know those like the back of my hand, play them a lot on my system. And that's when I knew it was so far below what I'm used to performance-wise, and I know the gear from Borison and Avic and all that much better than it sounded in that room. That's when I really started to put together something's going on. But what was cool is after they played Ghost of Johnny Cash, Songs of Silence, I asked the room, if you watched the video, if you watched all the way to the end, I asked the room how many people thought that was Johnny Cash, and I wanted to see. And actually the guy running the room said, yeah, that's Johnny Cash. And I said, no, it's not Johnny Cash. It's Ghost of Johnny Cash. And there's a debate of whether it's AI. That's what ChatGPT says, it's AI when you ask it. And then we've done some more research, and the guy that mastered it claims it's a 70-year-old gentleman that they do heavy processing after, even editing out some of the breaths, almost too much processing to make it sound like AI. So I don't know for sure. There's still a little bit of question to me about why he doesn't show this person's face in any of those videos. He's not recorded anywhere the singer. That lends more to the AI side of the equation. But again, there's no verdict just yet other than it's not Johnny Cash for sure. So stay tuned, still doing a lot of research on that, but wanted to give you an update on that. And it was kind of cool for them to play it, and still people think it's Johnny Cash. That's what's amazing. Also, let's see. Well, after the 4th floor, I was kind of disappointed. I went to lunch and I wanted to clear my head. And then I came back. I said, let me go to the bigger rooms, make sure it's not my ears. Maybe something, I'm congested. Something is wrong with my hearing. Although I've been out to Ontract Audio the day before and everything sounded fine and great over there. So I went into the Claris's room in the bigger rooms, the ballroom area of the hotel. And that was probably the first great room I heard. Very high quality sound, open baffle, line source, and yeah, I really liked the Claris's stuff. I sat near field, got a good seat for there. They started playing Led Zeppelin, which I think I had to leave the room prematurely because that gets blocked by YouTube. But I'd like to go back there. But that's definitely a room I would check out. Let's see, another one. Well, I guess the theme of today was line sources, line arrays, in terms of there was a Maggie killer, this Phonica International from Italy. I've never heard of them before. Looks about the size of a 3.7 Maggie in terms of height, but all planar like the 1.7s are, not a ribbon planar hybrid, and not as wide. And so it's about more height than a 1.7, not as wide, all planar, and it sounded pretty good. I think the price point's higher than Maggie, but there's probably some advantages there, and then got the Italy pedigree. I'd like to listen to it a little bit more and dive in. It was a little bit high noise floor, and I didn't get a chance to really test it with good music. But anyway, that was a revelation to me. Phonica International. If you like line sources, line arrays, that might be one to check out because I never knew about it. Let's see, another one. Oh, well, speaking of Maggie killers, well, Martin Logan killer was this Phenol, depending on, I guess, how you pronounce it. They've been in the hobby in the industry for a while. I've heard of them, I've known about them, and they do the electrostatic, so it's powered, and then some of their models have a hybrid bass module at the bottom, much like Martin Logan's, but not the curved surface. So it would be more like the Sanders speaker. And the Sanders electrostatic hybrid is what Edgar uses at Bach. He uses it in his home. Very directional and very high-end speaker that you can get tremendous results with the Bach in terms of crosstalk cancellation. The more you hear of your speaker versus your room, the better your benefits for both normal listening, Bach listening, and in general, in my opinion. But for preferences, sometimes people like the reverb and whatnot, hearing a little bit of the room. Inevitably, you're going to hear the room regardless. No matter what you do, you can't create an anechoic chamber. But so that's why I tend to like directional speakers a little bit, and open baffle gives me a little bit of that reverb that I like. And so I really think that the Fennel speakers, I'd like to test that one a little bit more. It's in one of these hotel rooms, so again, it didn't suffer as much, and that's when I started realizing both that one, Phonica, and other ones, and actually Maggie's were in a room. The 3.7s were in a room with Hegel. Those rooms in these type bedrooms, hotel rooms, did not have as much of the coloration. So that's what made me think it had to do with dispersion to the ceiling and the floor. Again, a line source does not radiate as much reflections to the ceiling and the floor. But I'm still not 100% sure on that. And then, of course, the other big rooms at the bottom that I saw today were Vox and the Hyphen speaker. Vox sounded pretty good. I don't think that was the best area. It's like a mini room within a room, but no borders. I don't think that was doing that justice, but you got to sniff the potential of the Vox and the acapellas in that same, and they're going to rotate acapellas, Vox, and Audio Vector. 3 great speakers that I really love. I don't think you're going to get the full potential in that room, but you're going to be able to sniff the potential, maybe learn about them. So definitely check out that room. It's at the very end of the hall. But I think the highlight for me today in terms of new stuff, of all the new stuff I saw, was getting to finally hear the Hyphen speaker. And I had high expectations, and I wasn't disappointed. Now, was it the best sounding speaker I ever heard? Did I find some things that I didn't think were 100% to my taste? Yes, but in that environment where they have 3 rooms carved out, and huge ceilings, and filling that huge a space with bass in a narrow setup, I don't know for sure. You can't say for sure. What I heard, though, was extremely impressive, top to bottom, coherence, full range. I didn't feel like you needed a sub at all. I felt the integration of all the drivers were great. The only thing that I was kind of disappointed with was it wasn't disappearing as much as I thought it would, and imaging is great. So that could just be seating sometimes 6 inches of your seat, towing in that kind of environment. I really don't ding a speaker. I mean, I mention it because that's part of my job to say what I hear. I'm not going to sugarcoat or overlook certain things, but I think setup maybe requires a little more nuance than for a single seat, than probably what they've got them is set up straight for the wider audience. Again, these are the type of things you always have to factor in a show. Volume, setup, all these, the type of material they're playing, all of that can have an impact. So that's my wrap up for today. My battery's about to die, so I'm going to wrap it up for today. Tomorrow, Val asked to be in on the wrap up for the day, and we're going to have a meal together. So stay tuned, sign up, subscribe, and I'll see you back here soon.